What is up, you guys? Teller checking in for UFC Vegas 90. We got Brendan Allen taking on Chris Curtis as Curtis steps in on somewhat of short notice after Marvin Vettori had to pull out of the initial matchup. Now, I don't think we lost much here. I think that this fight is just as exciting. These men squared off a while back. Chris Curtis got that second round finish on Brendan Allen. So a great opportunity for redemption on Brendan Allen's part here. And anytime a fighter gets a chance to get another matchup against a fighter that defeated them, it's a great chance at redemption. But specifically when that fighter finishes you the way Curtis finished him, and when you're a fighter like Brendan Allen who feels he's the best fighter on planet Earth in this weight class. He's been on an absolute tear since that loss. If he wins this fight, he'll be on a 7-fight win streak. He will be making some noise in this division to eventually be fighting for the belt. I mean, he'll be right in the mix. You take a look at what's going on at the top of this division. Now, there's rumors that Israel Adesanya is going to be facing off against DDP at UFC 305 down under over there. So you got that going on. You got Robert Whitaker facing off of Khamzat Chimaev. Then you got Brendan Allen right there as well, right? Of course, Sean Strickland and Brendan Allen. Those are two other names you got to keep an eye on. Let me not completely overlook Jared Cannonier as well. But I mean, those are the men that are all stacked at the top of this division that are all chomping at the bit to get their hands in that gold. So actually, the top of the middleweight division is pretty exciting right now. I'm excited for this fight here. I want to see how Brendan Allen performs. Other than that, not the most stacked of cards, but we got UFC 300 right around the corner. I want to give all you guys a special thanks for supporting me here at the channel. I'm going to let you guys know right now, mark my words, I'm telling you, I'm going to go on an absolute tear over the next month. All right. So from this card into UFC 300 and even a couple weeks past that, there's some spots that I really, really like. If you guys want to work with me for my official plays, do not hesitate to reach out to me. I got my IG, my Twitter there below, my Instagrams, my email scrolling below. Shoot me a message and I'll give you guys some details there. Now, if you would like to donate to the channel, I got that in the description as well. Any of those funds that you donate will go towards bettering this channel. And I got some huge things coming here in the future that I'm working on. So I'm excited to show you guys them. I can't really talk about too much of it, but I'm looking to work on some partnerships and stuff with some big brands and stuff like that. So just trying to get this channel to another level. And you know what? I was on a little road trip. For those of you guys that keep track of me on IG, you saw me driving around and whatnot. And it was pretty cool, man. I stopped in a Hard Rock casino, and as I'm strolling through, one of you guys that's probably listening to this right now, he came up to me, he said, "Hey, the fortune teller, MMA fortune teller." Took a picture with them, man. That was pretty cool, man. I love bumping into you guys when I'm just strolling around, and it's always a surreal feeling. It's kind of almost as awkward for me as it probably is for you. It's kind of weird when we bump into each other, but in a good way. All right, guys. So won't hold you guys up anymore. Let's jump into the first fight.
Welcome to the show. This is the MMA fortune teller. Yeah.
The MMA fortune teller.
The teller.
Kicking the card off, we head over to the women's bantamweight division, the most shallow division in all of mixed martial arts. I'll prove it to you here in a second. We got the number 15th ranked Melissa Mullins taking on Nora Cornolle. Melissa Mullins, formerly known as Melissa Dixon, she just made her UFC debut in her last fight, and she's already ranked in the top 15, okay? She didn't even get a finish in that fight. Granted, I think she is a good fighter, and I was very pleased to see her performance because I had an official play on her at underdog odds when she went out there and took out Irina Alexeva. She looked very good. She had over 8 minutes of control time in that fight. That's a very interesting factor you have to keep an eye on because Nora Cornolle is a kickboxer, and in her UFC debut, which was her last fight, she squeaked by in a decision victory where she was controlled down on the mat for 8 minutes and 42 seconds against Jocelyn Edwards. And some people thought Edwards deserved to win that fight. Some people were very upset with that. So, that's going to be a big factor in this fight. I'm going to cut to the chase here, and I'm going to say that the fact that Melissa Mullins will be able to get this fight down to the mat and really be able to rain some damage down there as well, I think that's a major factor for me going towards her way. I like the kickboxing skills of Cornolle. But let's also take note that Melissa Mullins has some nice striking. I like her striking. She has good pop in her hands. She has good boxing skills. She surrounds herself with good people. I know that Melissa has had fighters like Judo Jim Wallhead in her corner before. She's 32 years old. She's not a young fighter, even though she just has 6 fights as a pro. She has a good amount of amateur fights as well. If you want to kind of throw a question mark next to her, she did take a couple losses as an amateur against some questionable opposition. So that's something you got to keep an eye on there. But she seems to be putting it together as of now. And also, the last victory she had before going into her UFC debut was against Daira, who we just saw fight and who snuck off a decision victory. But Daira has some good striking, and she finished her in the first round there. So understand that she's been tested a little bit now if you take a look at her last 2 fights. And Melissa Mullins is definitely the route you're going to go for your pick here. But now as we take a look at the betting line, she opened up as a minus 280 on my bookie. She's now minus 350. Those are steep odds for a women's bantamweight match. So a minus 350 in this division, I think that says even a little more. I like Melissa Dixon here, and I think that she has potential to even get a finish down on the mat. Okay. But I'm not really crazy about a minus 350, but I like Melissa Dixon, Melissa Mullins. I don't know if she just got a recent divorce. Also, just to touch upon that, I think that she had a guy named Dixon that used to be in her corner, I believe. So I'm assuming she was married and maybe divorced, right? What a coincidence that was. I don't know. I'm just speculating here. So something to keep an eye on with her mental going into this fight. I could be completely off. She may have just got married, but that's kind of weird that she knew a guy named Dixon that used to corner her. So just kind of diving into some of that stuff here. But let's just keep it simple. Melissa Mullins is the better fighter overall. This isn't a kickboxing match, but be careful targeting a minus 350 line next to her here. You never know. Nora's obviously been extensively working on her takedown defense and her grappling. She knows she needs to keep this fight standing. In the middleweight division, we got Dylan Budka taking on César Almeida. Both these fighters coming off the recent season of Dana White's Contender Series. They were both victorious. Dylan Budka not having the most exciting performance, if you ask me. He was a fighter that was really pushing the pace with the grappling, constantly going in with his wrestling. He has a wrestling background. He was a junior college wrestler. He's fighting out of Ohio, out of a demolition fight team. Don't see him really surrounding himself with the highest level of talent. César Almeida, this is a fighter, one of the fighters that have came into the UFC as of recently with that extensive kickboxing background. We've seen a major push as of recently of that, right? Kind of led by Alex Pereira. Interestingly enough, César Almeida has fought Alex Pereira multiple times, I believe 3 times, winning 1 of the three battles there. So showing you the level of kickboxing that he has. He's also gone to a decision with fighters like Donovan Wise. I mean, he's obviously a talented kickboxer. He's an older fighter, and he's just recently made his way into the sport of MMA. He's trying to put the overall game together, and he looked pretty good against Lucas Fernando in that Dana White's Contender Series fight. Lucas Fernando's a good fighter. I know Fernando just lost another fight after that loss, but he was fighting some Dagestani guy that had a pretty solid resume. So I think that Fernando has just been being fed to the wolves. I think that Fernando victory for César Almeida was a big victory. He showed that he's not just a kickboxer. He showed well-rounded skills. He showed that he can get up when taken down. He showed he could stuff takedowns, and he also showed that he had some jiu-jitsu skills. Okay, so I was decently impressed with him. He's 36 years old. I think that if he can string off some victories, they will throw him to the fire quickly, but he has to showcase that he can stuff a takedown. This is a good test for him, taking on this wrestler, this young wrestler, Dylan Budka, who's going to test him there. Budka's going to run across the cage. He's going to look to take him down, and we're going to really get an understanding if Almeida can stuff those takedowns, or if he gets taken down, can he get back up to his feet and showcase his striking on the feet. I think Almeida will be a much higher step above Budka, and I actually am going to be picking César Almeida to get the job done here. Now, on my bookie, César Almeida opened up as a minus 145 favorite, and we've seen steady action going towards the wrestler's way. Back in the day, when you had a wrestler versus a striker, it was almost a given. I was just going to go with the wrestler, man. All right, the times have changed. They have changed in a major way. You guys see how the judges are scoring these fights. If Budka thinks he's going to press Almeida against the cage and maybe sneak off a couple takedowns and not rain down any type of damage, and he thinks he's just going to get an easy victory, he's sadly mistaken, because he better be landing damaging shots if he gets a takedown, because if he struggles there, Almeida is going to land a couple shots here and there. He'll drop some elbows. He'll have a couple moments, and he could still win those rounds. And obviously he's live to get a knockout as well. So I like the underdog value on César Almeida here. More talent working its way into the UFC, coming off Dana White's Contender Series. Gene Matsumoto looked very good on this past season. He showcased that he could really push the pace with his striking. He's taking on the former Ultimate Fighter contestant Dan Argueta. Dan Argueta is a fighter that has shown that he really is lacking as far as his striking goes, and specifically with his striking defense. And that's going to be a problem here as Matsumoto really put on a clinic against Casey Tanner, just peppering him up, landing leg kicks at will, just showing his overall kickboxing arsenal there. I do believe if Argueta is going to have success in this fight, he is going to have to resort to his grappling. He's going to have to maybe take a back, just push the pace on Matsumoto and try to break him. Argueta's major skill set is his cardio and his wrestling. Okay. As of recently, he had 2 no contests in a row, but let's clear the air here. He took an L against Miles Johns. He was outlanded in that fight. I do believe what Miles Johns tested positive for some type of oral steroid, maybe an Adderall or whatnot, but I do believe whatever he did is actually now permitted. Okay. So just don't look too much into that no contest. That was an L. And I will say, the fight he had against Ronnie Lawrence was a W. He was looking very good as long as that fight lasted, and the referee kind of botched the call there. So I think he would have took the W there. Defeated Nick Aguirre before that. That's a low-level UFC fighter. And then let's just talk about his UFC debut against Damon Jackson that took place up in the featherweight division. There was moments that he had Damon Jackson hurt, and on the feet, he could have potentially finished him. He had no confidence in his striking, kept resorting to his wrestling, kind of showed some low fight IQ there as well. But even in that fight, he did showcase the grappling skills that he has and the cardio. That was against a guy that was much bigger. So that's what Dan Argueta will have to do if he's going to have success in this fight. He's going to have to try to exploit Matsumoto in the grappling world, and he's in the grappling department, and he's going to have to try to maybe show a deficiency in his cardio. I just don't know if Gene Matsumoto is going to have a deficiency there, man. This is a young kid. He has 14 professional fights already. It's not really battle tested, but when you watch him in the cage, he kind of passes the eye test. Okay, so the more I break down tape on these 2 fighters, man, I see Gene Matsumoto landing on Dan Argueta at will, bloodying Argueta up. Argueta's been really bloodied up in his recent fights, and Argueta just leads with his head, and I think Gene Matsumoto is going to hurt him. And even if Argueta tries to push the pace late in this fight, I think he's going to be hurt, and I think it's going to kind of mess with his will. I think he's going to be damaged and hurt, and I think that Gene Matsumoto is just going to kind of take control of this fight. You know, he's going to be the man kind of leading the charge by landing all that damage. All right, so I do have Gene Matsumoto getting a victory here in his UFC debut against Dan Argueta. Now, here's the thing. I've seen Gene Matsumoto as high as a -215. I don't like Gene Matsumoto anywhere up in the -200 range. I don't. I think the value is on Dan Argueta. I think that he is somewhat of a live dog here. Again, this is a guy that is as devoted to the fight game as any. You guys have heard me say that before. I know that, man. Kind of diving into what Argueta is about. This is a guy that trains nonstop. He has crazy cardio. He surrounded himself with good people. I think as of recently, he's been really spending a lot of time with Cub Swanson and those guys over there. And even before that, he's always been around solid people. I think he trained over at Jackson Wink before that back in the day. But this is a guy that is completely devoted to the fight game. And if he could try to bring this fight to the later rounds and drag Matsumoto to the deep waters, maybe he could drown him there. Maybe he takes it back. Maybe he exposes Matsumoto, but I think that Matsumoto is just going to land at will and bloody him up, and I think that he could potentially get a finish. I think Argueta's going to be bloodied up so bad that there's potential for a finish there, but nobody's ever finished Argueta yet, and he's extremely tough, so be careful banking on that. But I do have Gene Matsumoto winning this fight, with the value being on Dan Argueta from what the lines that I'm seeing out there on multiple sports books. In the women's strawweight division, we got Cynthia Calvillo taking on Piera Rodriguez. Cynthia Calvillo is fighting for her UFC career right now. I think I could say that pretty safely. If she loses this fight, she will be on a 6-fight losing streak. Okay, so I know it's been against decent talent, but still, you go on a 6-fight losing skid. She's getting up there in age. She is up there in age, 36 years old. I mean, it has to be the end for her here. So this is a fighter that's coming into this fight, and Calvillo that really has her back up against the wall. Expect her to be motivated here. Remember her back in the day, man. She was so hyped up going into that Carla Esparza fight at the time, training with Uriah Faber and Team Alpha Male. She had victories over girls like Joanne Wood, Pearl Gonzalez, Montana De La Rosa, Jillian Robertson. She had good boxing skills. She had the wrestling background, and she just never delivered into the hype. And, her last victory was the main event fight against Jessica Ai, if you guys remember that, deep in the heart of 2020. Oh man, sad times when you look back at that. Just imagine sitting at the house watching that fight. Oh, bringing back some scary times. But Piera Rodriguez, let's talk about her real quick. This is a girl that's a well-rounded fighter, has grappling in her back pocket, has good striking. She's a well-rounded fighter. Believe she is a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt. And coming off a loss though, where she was submitted against Jillian Robertson, that's not the worst look. It's not as bad of a look as some people would think it is. Jillian Robertson is a very dangerous grappler, and she will pull off subs even against high level talent. So she was just off there. Before that, had a solid performance on Dana White's Contender Series, and then came into the UFC and got victories over Kay Hansen, which if you guys don't follow Kay Hansen on Instagram, you might want to, I believe she's a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt too, but a young fighter that's trying to work her way back into the UFC. And then she had a victory over Sam Hughes. So some recognizable names there. Let me cut to the chase here. I'm not going to take Cynthia Calvillo to win a fight in the year 2024. Okay, I'm just not. Piera Rodriguez surrounds herself with good people. I think she's put in some work over at MMA Masters down in Miami, and she's a fighter that is just going to be a step ahead, in my opinion, over Cynthia Calvillo here. I think she's going to be a little bit more game. She can have more confidence. Cynthia Calvillo is going to be kind of on her back foot as she's trying to throw these little peppering shots, where I see Piera Rodriguez kind of coming forward and sitting down on her shots a little bit more so. And I don't see Cynthia exploiting Piera down on the mat or pulling off anything similarly to what Jillian Robertson just did. I just don't see it. So I am on Piera Rodriguez here. Piera Rodriguez, you could see her on some of these sports books right around -150. That's what she's on. That's what she's at on Bovada right now. She opened up as a -385. That's crazy line movement, man. Crazy line movement. A lot of action coming in on Cynthia. That's got to have you scratching your head. Maybe there's some insight going on. I mean, she opened up as a -220 on my book. She's now -170. You're seeing that same movement. Maybe there's something going on with some people that are in the know with Cynthia that she's ready to go for this fight. I'm just not buying into it. I'm not. The way I'm looking at this fight is that I'd be more happy to sit back and wait on this line as it keeps coming down and back Piera Rodriguez in this fight here. Give me P-Rod to win via decision. Haley Alateng taking on Victor Hugo Silva. Victor Hugo Silva, another fighter coming off Dana White's Contender Series, who actually had a solid performance. There was a lot of question marks in regards to him going into that fight there. And I would say there's still a lot of question marks in regards to him, even though he pulled off a beautiful knee bar. I mean, we do know that he has some nasty sub skills. I mean, you saw the way he worked his way in his fight down on the mat. I mean, he was very comfortable down there pulling off that knee bar. It's nasty. It's a move that he's pulled off before. So you can expect him to look for leg locks and whatnot. And I think just overall, his BJJ game is pretty nasty. I think we can kind of tell. Now, he has 28 professional fights, but against a lot of low-level competition, a lot of fights that you can't really pull up online. So you're kind of, there's just some unknowns with Victor Hugo Silva. On the other hand, Alateng is a fighter that we've been able to see perform in the UFC for some time. We kind of know what he's about. He has decent power. We've seen him go out there and starch dudes like Kevin Kroom, go out there and get victories over guys like Chad Enhellinger, who just had a big victory. He showed that he still had a little something left in the tank. Coming off a loss against Chris Gutierrez, but we know Gutierrez is a go fighter, so it is what it is there. And his other loss was against Casey Kenny, who's a very good fighter that I don't know why disappeared from the fight game. So it's really hard to kind of gauge. It's kind of hard to gauge Alateng as well when you take a look at his wins and losses, just because a lot of his wins are against lower level competition. Doesn't have that big standout victory, and we just don't know what kind of fighter. We really don't have a great grasp of what kind of fighter Victor Hugo Silva is here. So, I'm going to be completely transparent with you guys. This is a very hard fight to cap, and it's a very hard fight to predict. I will say this. I like the upside of Victor Hugo Silva here. I like the jiu-jitsu skills he has. I like his physique. I like the way he comes in. He looks like he's an athletic dude. He performs like he's an athletic dude. He has a nice physique to him. And I say the ceiling's a little higher on him. And I'm going to side with him here. I will pick Victor Hugo Silva to get the job done. But again, this is a fight that is hard to gauge. Okay. Haley Alateng opened up as a plus 200 on Bovada. He's now plus 115. If you were able to get in on Alateng early on, that would be where you want to be as far as where the value is in this fight. Because I have this fight kind of capped a lot closer than a plus 200. And you could almost argue that even at plus 115 where Alateng is, that's where the value is. Because there's so many unknowns. But I will pick Victor Hugo Silva to get the job done. And I'll say he pulls off the sub again. The jiu-jitsu skills are looking pretty nasty. I'll say he finds a sub, which Alateng has only been subbed once out of his 9 losses. Took a lot of losses early on in his career against some lower level talent too, but it seemed to kind of rise his game up through the recent years. He's kind of hung around in the UFC, right? I mean, so he's not a fighter that's just snuck his way into the UFC fighting low level competition. It's just a guy that didn't deserve to be there, to be here. I mean, he's proven he's a UFC caliber fighter to an extent, getting those W's, but we will see if Victor Hugo Silva is a UFC caliber fighter this Saturday, and I'm willing to take a flyer on him. Let's see if he can get the job done. I will pick him to get the job done, and I think he could get a submission victory. In the bantamweight division, or at least that's the plan here, Norma Dumont, currently ranked the 11th bantamweight fighter, which is interesting, right? Because I do believe she's never made weight in this division. I believe she's been fighting in the featherweight division, tried to fight in the bantamweight division, didn't make weight. She's taking on Germaine de Randamie, who's making her return to the octagon at 39 years old. She just had a baby as well. So that's something that you got to note. She's coming off a long hiatus. I think she hasn't fought for about 3 years or so. If you guys forgot what Germaine de Randamie is about, she has some of the nastiest striking in all of women's mixed martial arts, or at least she had some of the nastiest striking in the game. She is also a fighter that has shown to evolve with her grappling. We saw her go out there and pull off that guillotine choke over Juliana Pena. So she's a game fighter. She's 39 years old and coming off a huge layoff. So, I mean, we don't know what to expect here. Norma Dumont is a fighter that's very game. I think that we've seen that now. This is a fighter that knows how to get the job done. She lost a split decision to Macy Chiasson, who Chiasson is, the originator of giraffe syndrome, Macy Chiasson. She has definitely shown that she's a legitimate fighter. So the split decision lost to her, not really the worst look. Besides that, man, she just goes out here and handles business. So I got to back Norma Dumont here. She's been more active and she's younger. She's more primed. But at the same time, if Germaine de Randamie comes back into the cage and she picks up where she left off, she could definitely get the job done here. She's going to have a 4-inch reach advantage. She's a lengthy fighter. She knows how to use it. And like I said earlier, she is just a phenomenal kickboxer. But how is she going to look? I mean, we're going to find out this upcoming Saturday, man. I can't guarantee you that Germaine de Randamie is going to go out here and look just as good as she's ever looked. She's a plus 150 on my bookie right now. She is the underdog. Norma Dumont, right around a minus 190 favorite. I say there's more value on the underdog here. There's a lot of unknowns, a lot of question marks. I personally don't feel comfortable chalking up minus 190 on Norma just in case Germaine comes out looking phenomenal. I mean, it could be a problem. At the very least, this fight could play out very closely. But honestly, if Germaine shows up, Germaine is a fighter that goes out there and she's a showstopper, man. When she's really hitting on all cylinders, she's a phenomenal fighter. Okay, so I was always a big fan of Germaine de Randamie's, but way too many question marks going on. I will pick Norma Dumont via decision. What's up, you guys? Real quick, wanted to let you know if you want my exclusive bets for an entire month, which I already told you guys this next month, I'm going to be raising hell. If you guys want them for free, all you got to do is sign up through my referral link to Bovada.lv. You guys know I've been working with Bovada.lv for a while now. I'm a big fan of the sportsbook. It's a great sportsbook. Check them out if you guys want beforehand. But before you sign up, reach out to me so I can get you that referral link and I can hook you up with some official action that you guys will be cashing in on. All right, guys? Reach out to me if you're interested. I got my email scrolling below. I got my IG, my Twitter there. You can shoot me a message. Let's get working here. Two OGs squaring off here. Court McGee taking on Alex Morono. Court McGee, I believe he was the season 11 Ultimate Fighter winner. Alex Morono is a fighter that's been around for a while. He's battled with a lot of big names in the game. Remember when he butchered up and smashed Donald Cerrone, of course, towards the end of Cowboy Cerrone's career. I mean, a primed Cowboy Cerrone would have absolutely worked Alex Morono, but props to Morono for going in there and doing what he needed to do. Alex Morono, just 33 years old compared to Court McGee's 39 years old. I do believe Morono has a lot more left to give to the game, to the fight game. He's a fighter that has 32 or 33 professional fights, a lot of experience. He's not necessarily a young fighter, but when you take a look at Court McGee, who's coming off 2 knockout losses in a row, he's coming off almost a year layoff. He's a fighter that he's taken a lot of damage throughout the years. I think that I have some question marks about his chin, and I don't know how he's going to hold up here. Alex Morono is not necessarily a power puncher, but Alex Morono is a fighter that can push the pace on you, and he's an accurate fighter. He will land. He has this herky-jerky type of style that kind of frustrates his opponents and kind of confuses them a little bit. It's weird. He lands in his own awkward way, and I don't know if Court McGee's going to make it out of this fight without being knocked out. I think I'm looking at Alex Morono to get a finish in this spot. I know that's not necessarily the way you would typically target Morono. I mean, just to kind of give you an idea, out of 23 victories, Morono's had 6 knockouts. That's at a 30% clip. It's not necessarily a high number, but when you take into consideration that the way McGee has looked as of recently, this isn't the old Court McGee, okay? He's only been knocked out 3 times out of 12 losses, but again, this is not the old Court McGee. This is a 39-year-old man who's coming off 2 knockout losses in a row. Do you guys remember the way he was finished by Matt Brown? Okay, the Jeremiah Wells knockout was one thing. We know Wells carries serious power, but still he telegraphs his shots, and the way he froze up and got hit by him was still questionable. But you get elbowed by Matt Brown like that, that's a problem. Okay, so that is a problem there. And I will say Court McGee I will say Alex Morono is going to get Court McGee out of there. Okay, and I want to go over some numbers with you real quick. Let's take a look at this. Alex Morono, he does push the pace with the striking, landing 5.02 strikes per minute. Court McGee is active as well at 4.63. Court McGee only absorbing 3.68, but those numbers are skewed to the younger McGee. He's not the same defensively, and I think that could be a problem in this fight here. So let's take a look at the betting line, where we see Alex Morono as high as a minus 350, opened up as a 375, and even touched 400. So Morono's a huge favorite here. No matter how you're looking at it, or no matter where this line's moved, he's still a huge favorite here. And I get it. It's a high line, though. I mean, I'll sit here and I'll say I don't necessarily have a problem with it. I just see Alex Morono showing up. He's a game fighter. He's also a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt. He's just an underrated dude. I think people kind of look at his physique and they don't really think that he's it, but he kind of is it. He is. He's not. I'm not saying he's a guy that's like a top 15, perennial top 15 guy that's gonna make a run at the title. But he is a legitimate UFC fighter still right now. He could hang with a lot of solid dudes. So Court McGee's washed. All right, this is going to be fun here. We got my boy, Trevor Peek. I think a lot of you guys are going to give me some heat for this pick. Sneak peek. Taking on Charlie Campbell. Trevor Peek, you guys know I think he is top 5 most exciting fighters to watch in the game right now. This guy absolutely looks to decapitate his opponents, and if he's not going to get the job done, he's willing to go out on his shield. Although he's never been finished, but you could tell with his fighting style, he's willing to go out on his shield. It's just these guys can't get him out of there. He's just so damn tough. I mean, look at the jawline on him. This dude, he's something else. All right, Charlie Campbell, 28 years old. Training over there under Sarah Longo, getting rave reviews about what he's doing in the gym. Let's be very clear. If he didn't make one little mental error in that Chris Duncan fight, people would be raving about him right now. I think people, for some people that didn't really fully understand what went on in that fight, because I've been hearing people talk about this fight, and I don't think people, I know the majority of you guys do, but let's be very clear. He was on his way to finishing Chris Duncan, and he got overzealous. He was running in and just looking to get Duncan out of there. He got excited. He was like a kid opening Christmas gifts on Christmas morning. And he ran into a shot and he got clipped. Okay, it was a learning experience for him. If he would have just slowed down, he could have methodically finished Chris Duncan. Duncan was out of it, and he made that mistake. Okay, since that loss, he's won 2 fights in a row. Also had 2 grappling matches that he won. So good for him participating in those grappling matches as well. But knocked out Josh Strecker over there at CFFC. And then he won his UFC debut, which he took on short notice against Alex Reyes. Alex Reyes was coming off a 6-year layoff, but still Charlie Campbell went in there and showcased that he is a sharp striker. He's a well-rounded fighter. And I think when you break down his tape, you could kind of see why Sarah Longo and all them are raving about him. I'm buying in. I believe what they're saying. I remember them raving about Chris Weidman before he came into the UFC. They were right about him. Okay, so I kind of trust those guys when they start raving about a certain fighter. Okay, Trevor Peek has serious power. He will be live to land a knockout against Charlie Campbell, especially if Campbell makes a similar mistake to what he did again in that Duncan fight. But Trevor Peek has a lot of defensive deficiencies. I think Charlie Campbell will be much more technically sound on the feet, and he will find the mark here. And I think he's going to finish Trevor Peek. I think there's a real likelihood that he gets a finish against Trevor Peek. That's what I'm going to say. I'm going to say he gets a knockout. As tough as Trevor Peek is, as solid as his chin is, you can't constantly walk into these types of shots, and just be so defensively deficient. I think Charlie Campbell's going to land some big shots, and I like the mojo that Charlie Campbell brings to the cage just as much as I like what Peek brings to the cage. I like both these fighters, and I'm taking Charlie Campbell to get the job done. I think he finds a knockout here. So, but to play devil's advocate, if he gets sloppy, Trevor Peek can crack him, and also Trevor Peek is a game fighter who also, let me just note, looked very good against Muhammad Yahya, but Yahya is a fighter that was not proven at all. He was getting that hometown fight over there in Saudi Arabia, and he was kind of the hometown guy that gave him that opportunity. I think they thought they were laying him up against Peek, and Peek looked very good in that bounce back fight. But remember the Chepe Mariscal fight where he was completely outclassed. Mariscal was just a complete step ahead of him, and I think Charlie Campbell will do something very similar to that. So let's go take a look at the betting line. Charlie Campbell right now is a minus 220 on my bookie. Touch 250. Open up at minus 200. So a little bit of some U action here, and I'm on the Charlie Campbell side, and I'm not sure if I'll get to the prop video for this card, which, just so you guys know, we will be doing those prop videos, especially for the big cards, and we'll try to get them for every event, but don't flip out if we don't get them out. But they will definitely be out for the big cards, the pay-per-view cards like UFC 300, and we might get to a prop edition for this. And you want to be looking at Charlie Campbell potentially inside the distance or via KO, stuff like that, and see if there's a bargain line there, especially because Peek's never been finished, so people might not be banking on that, but they need to understand that defensively he has some issues there. Łukasz Brzeski taking on Valter Walker. This is Johnny Walker's brother, Valter Walker, getting an opportunity to fight in the octagon. So he's pumped up. I believe he is fighting out of Russia. Trains with guys like Bogdan Guskov, who just had a big victory. I've seen them training together quite often. Valter Walker, he's not going to have a similar style to Johnny Walker. When you break down tape on him, he's much more plotty and flat-footed. Decently technical with his striking, but he's not a guy that's throwing all types of wild spinning attacks and all that. I think he has potential. I think he has a decently high ceiling. He could hold his own in this division. You guys know the heavyweight division is not a division that's super deep, so he can enter and start to make some noise here. He's just 26 years old. This is a good introduction to him, taking a guy like Łukasz Brzeski, who I really think is not it. He definitely suffers from Frankenstein syndrome. There's no question about that. And very stiff, very boring, honestly. I mean, this guy hasn't won a fight since that Dylan Potter fight, which he did get a submission. It was overturned, I do believe, due to a failed drug test. And since that failed drug test, he lost 3 fights in a row, coming off a knockout loss to Waldo Cortez Acosta. Just not too high on him. And not really excited to watch him perform, really, from what he's shown me recently. If he can kind of shake some things up and maybe he can make this fight competitive. I mean, there's definitely question marks in regards to Walker's game. He needs to prove more to us, but he's 11-0. He's passed every test that's been thrown his way, and I just don't think that Łukasz Brzeski is going to be the guy to put a halt to what Walker's doing right now, from what I've seen on tape. So I do like Valter Walker to get the better of this fight. I think that he'll be more methodical on the feet, more technical. He can either outpoint Brzeski, or he could also land the mark and get the knockout here. If the Frankenstein syndrome is kicking in full effect, and Brzeski's coming into this fight looking very lethargic out there, even though Walker is not as athletic and not as fast as his brother, he may be able to find the mark and get Brzeski out of there. So, Out of his 11 victories, he's finished 6 of those, 1 sub as well. Not the most battle tested, but I will say that I'll say he can get a finish here. I wouldn't be surprised at all if he gets a finish. I'll say he gets a first or second round TKO. Brzeski coming in off a knockout loss. The chin has been damaged, and let's see if Johnny Walker's brother can come in and make a statement. Maybe start popping the worm out. Wouldn't expect that, but right now he's right around a minus 400. That's what he is on my bookie, and that's pretty much what we're seeing. I seen him at minus 360 on some other books and whatnot. He's a big time favorite here, and I think that he does show up and gets the job done. To chalk up those kind of odds though, when there's some question marks about his game and making his UFC debut, and we'll see how he performs. Is that something you want to do? Potentially throw it in a 2-team parlay. I'm not saying that's what I would do necessarily, but I don't mind being on the Walker side of things, even with the steep line. In the lightweight division, we got Ignacio Bahamondes taking on Christos Giagos. This is a fight that has all the makings of being an exciting fight, for sure. All right, love him or hate him. I know some of you guys get on me for backing my boy Christos. He's came through before, but he's been having a tough time as of recently, coming off a fight where he was finished by Daniel Zulaber. Before that, though, he did have a nice knockout victory against Ricky Glenn, was submitted against Thiago Moises, knocked out against Arman Sarukian. Do understand that those are high-level opponents there. Submitted Sean Seriano, out-grappled Carlton Manus. I mean, that's not a UFC caliber fighter. Let's be clear there. All right. I mean, I won't go through his entire resume. Just know that Giagos does show up. He's willing to go to war. Okay. He's a game fighter. But I do have some question marks in regards to his game right now. He's getting finished up quite often. And Ignacio Bahamondes is a fighter that could definitely finish you. I mean, he's a super lengthy striker. He's a fighter that has been in the world of mixed martial arts since a very young kid, from being since he was a very young kid. You know, his dad was a boxer, I believe, a Chilean boxer. I mean, this is a dude that knows the fight game. But we've seen him get sucked into wars before and not come out on the winning side of things. When you think about that John McDessie fight, that was a fight you would think that he would have really handled, and he got sucked into a war. He wasn't fighting on the outside. When you have the type of range that he has, you would think that he would like to be in the end of his punches more. I mean, this is a guy that will trade in the pocket, and if he does that against Giagos, he could run into trouble because Giagos loves to involve himself in a war. And I'm just saying, if it does play out like that, Bahamondes can run into some trouble. So the big question mark I have here, and Bahamondes is coming off a loss against Ludovic Klein, but Klein's been handling business, and I do think that Klein's a step ahead of Giagos. But if Bahamondes doesn't put his head on his shoulders and start fighting with a little bit of a higher fight IQ in the cage, it's gonna continue to bite him here and there. All right, he'll get his victories, he'll get his flashy KOs. Remember, one of the most spectacular KOs we've ever seen was one he had against Roosevelt Roberts. Okay, and he will be live to land a phenomenal knockout against Giagos here. I'm gonna be very real with you guys. I think we're gonna see a knockout in this fight. In fact, I think he's gonna knock Giagos out. But if he doesn't put his head on his shoulders and starts to make mental mistakes in here, he's a young fighter. If he's not learning from his past experiences, this will be a war, and Giagos could potentially prevail here. So just putting that out there. But I do have Bahamondes winning this fight via KO. I think he finds the mark here. Giagos, 34 years old, 31 professional fights. He's taken some damage, and I don't think he's going to hold up, if I'm being quite honest here. So hopefully my boy Giagos ain't listening to this. Sorry, brother, if you are, but you guys know I got to call it how I see it. Bahamondes right now a minus 375 favorite on my bookie. He's a steep favorite. A lot of steep favorites on this card. I don't know about that money line, man. I mean, it's a little high. Maybe there's more value in the dog there. Maybe I'm being a little biased, though. I mean, I'm trying not to be biased here. I mean, I think Giagos has the potential to be game here. But let me be clear. I want to be on the Bahamondes side here, even with the high line. I want to be on the Bahamondes side, and I want to potentially take a look at Bahamondes inside the distance, taking a look at the KO prop and whatnot. In the featherweight division, got the former Cage Warriors champion Morgan Charriere taking on Chepe Mariscal. Morgan really impressed me in his UFC debut. I mean, throwing rapid body kicks, just whipping that left body kick to Manolo Zacchini. I mean, that was really a phenomenal performance. Got him out of there under 4 minutes. Thought that was a big-time performance. Now, I know Manolo's not proven at all, but just the way he moves around in there, I mean, this dude Morgan's serious, especially in the striking realm. Okay, so on the feet, I mean, you could expect him to be game. I truly believe that. Now, he has 9 losses compared to 9 victories. It's not really a solid resume. But he's 28 years old. I mean, he took a lot of those losses when he was younger in his career. But you do have to have some question marks in regards to his game. The vast majority of those losses have come by way of decision. So it's not like we're seeing him out there, getting knocked out like he has a questionable chin, or he's in there, getting out grappled and subbed every time he takes an L. So there's some moving parts going along with his game. I kind of wonder what's the deal with that exactly. But from what I've been seeing from him recently, even in his last couple fights before working his way into the UFC, he's looked really good. Okay, and again, I'll repeat, especially with the striking here. So Chepe Mariscal is an underrated fighter. He's a black belt in judo. He has shown that he's a little bit of a technician with the striking as well. We saw him when he took on Trevor Peek. He was a step far ahead of Peek, dominated that fight, took that fight on short notice as well. So, and then when you take a look at his resume, you understand that he's an underrated fighter. If you take a look at his losses, took a loss to Gregor Gillespie. There's some recognizable names here. Gregor Gillespie, a stud wrestler back in the day, lost to Bryce Mitchell, lost to Joe Anderson Brito, Steve Garcia, got knocked out by Steve Garcia. Garcia's actually proven that he's legit, and I was kind of wrong on Garcia. Sean Siriano, ex-UFC fighter. Not the best name, but still, Chepe's the real deal. And also, Chepe, has a victory over Jack Jenkins, but Jenkins injured himself in that fight. So do you want to give Chepe full credit for that? I mean, kind of had a judo throw there and kind of led to the injury on Jack Jenkins. We cashed on that. And that was an epic card, by the way. That was the Sean Strickland versus Adesanya card where we cashed on Chepe as an underdog on that play there. But still, a little bit of a fluky victory, depending on how much credit you want to give him for the finish. Has a victory over Yusuf Zalal, Pat Sabatini. I did want to also mention he had victories over big names like that. So I think that Chepe is a game fighter. He's 31 years old. And, this has been a tough one for me. I've really had a hard time settling in on who I want to pick here because I was very impressed with the striking that Morgan put on in his last fight. It's just, I think that Chepe may be the more well-rounded fighter. And I think that Chepe is very live to go out here and get a W. But I'm going to stick to my initial instinct, which is I'm going to take Morgan Charriere to get the job done. I think that his striking and his athleticism will be the difference in this fight, but Chepe will be game and will look to get his hand raised here. I think it's very likely this fight can go either way. Okay, so let's take a look at the betting line where we can kind of get a better understanding. So Morgan is a minus 140 to minus 145. He is the favorite going into this fight, and we've seen movement going the other way. So the action is kind of in agreement to what I'm seeing. I think this fight should be more closer to a pick'em line. I would say a slight edge to Morgan just because he's hitting on all cylinders. He's the better athlete out there. I think he'll be a little bit faster with his striking and whatnot. And before Chepe had that little judo throw where Jack Jenkins' shoulder kind of dislocated, if we're being honest, Jack Jenkins was looking a little sharper out there. I think we kind of see something similar as this fight picks up, but with Morgan just being a little bit of a step ahead, but it will be a close match. But give me Morgan Charriere. I think that he has some serious potential, but needs to really round out his overall game. Hey guys, as I mentioned, I am looking to absolutely tear up the next month as far as these official plays go. It's a great time to hop on. If you guys are looking to work with me, do not hesitate to reach out to me. I'll give you my pricing. I'm telling you guys, it'll be worth your while. Shoot me a message, whether it's through Instagram, Twitter, or email. I got it all scrolling below and listed here below. So if you're looking to work with me, shoot me a message. Let's go. Here we go. We got the co-main event. Alexander Hernandez taking on Damon Jackson. Alexander Hernandez with so many ups and downs throughout his career. Of course, when he made his UFC debut on short notice and had a huge knockout victory over Beneil Dariush, and that was as high as it could get, to remembering other fights where he was talking all that shit against Donald Cowboy Cerrone and got completely outclassed. I mean, there's been some brutal downs with his career. How about when he fought in his hometown of San Antonio and he took on Francisco Trinaldo, and there was a combined like 2 strikes landed in that fight. It was horrible, right? And that was coming off the Cerrone loss. But victories over guys like OAM, Beneil Dariush, I mean, he was so hyped up after the OAM fight. And really, since then, his career just never really caught on track. I mean, a couple little wins here. Mike Breeden, Jim Miller was a big one. Chris Grutzmacher. So Breeden and Grutzmacher, lower level wins, a lot of losses scattered all throughout here. I'm kind of surprised the UFC is giving him an opportunity like this. 31 years old though, as far as his age goes and his physicality goes, I mean, he's really in his prime, but you also have to take into consideration he's dropping down to the featherweight division here. He did that in his last fight, and things didn't really go that good for him. Took that L against Bill Algeo, and now he's taking on Damon Jackson, a fighter. This is kind of a good matchup for him because Damon Jackson's a fighter that's 35 years old, coming off 2 losses in a row. Was brutally knocked out against Dan Ige. Was hurt against Argueta. We talked about that fight earlier. We know what Damon Jackson looks to do. Looks to kind of walk you down like a zombie, push the pace, use his grappling. He's a tough dude. I think Alexander Hernandez is very game to land a knockout blow in this fight. He puts a lot of power into his shots. We referred to that Beneil Dariush knockout. I mean, he has that kind of power. He's not the most technical fighter, but he's explosive. He's still in his physical prime. And my gut's telling me he's going to land that shot. I just don't trust Damon Jackson. He keeps getting wobbled and hurt in his fights. Yeah, he's too stiff. But if Alexander Hernandez does not get that knockout, this fight will play out very closely. And Damon Jackson potentially will take over this fight with his cardio and his grappling. Alexander Hernandez is a guy that kind of gets down on himself as the fight goes. Damon Jackson doesn't. He starts digging deeper. And I do worry that if Hernandez doesn't hurt him early on, that this fight can get really sticky for him. So that's how I see this fight going. But overall, I'm going to back Alexander Hernandez just being the more primed fighter that should be a little bit more explosive. And I just have this gut feeling that he's going to tee off on Damon Jackson early on in this fight. Even if he doesn't find the finish, maybe he hurts Jackson so bad that Jackson's not really himself and he can kind of do enough to sneak off a decision. But I'm actually going to say that Hernandez gets a knockout in this fight here. So I've seen Hernandez from the -195 range all the way up to -220, which is what he is on my bookie. Opened up as a -190 on my bookie. So action coming in on him. And I don't see the value on him up in the -200s. I think the value is on Damon Jackson. I would be targeting Jackson with the dog odds. That's where the value is in this fight, if you're asking me. Other than that, you're looking at prop bets for Alexander Hernandez to get a knockout if you can get a juicy prop there. All right, a first round, or just look for a KO prop in general if it's worth it. But if it's steamed and the line's already high, that's not even worth it. I don't know. So, that's something that we could be talking about in the prop video to come. Here we go. We're at the main event. We touched upon this fight as we kicked the video off. Brendan Allen taking on Chris Curtis. Chris Curtis had the finish in the second round the first time these men fought. This is a little bit of a different fight, though. Okay, it's been some years. Chris Curtis is now 36 years old. Brendan Allen just 28 years old. Kind of crazy when you think about the fact he has 28 professional fights. He's been fighting under the UFC banner for some time. The fight he had on Dana White's Contender Series against Aaron Jeffrey, who's a very tough fighter, that was a while ago. Brendan Allen is on a 6-fight winning streak. He's looking to push it to 7. That last loss was against Chris Curtis. So Brendan Allen has so much fight experience. He's a very mature fighter for his age, but I would still say that he is growing as a fighter. He's still evolving and learning. Whereas, I would say that Chris Curtis is a finished product. I would feel safe saying that. I think he is a finished product. Curtis is going to look to stuff takedowns in this fight. He's going to look to rip the body. He's going to look to set up that headshot and probably try to get that knockout on Brendan Allen. At least if he's fighting a smart fight, if he has a smart game plan, that's what he should do. Brendan Allen has shown to have deficiencies with his striking defense at times, right? We saw Sean Strickland finish him early on. We saw Chris Curtis finish him. We also saw, those were the 2 knockouts that he took, yeah. Was also subbed, which I just want to go over a couple of his other losses if we scroll back a little bit. So those are the 2 big losses where he was finished. And then you got to go back to over to the LFA days where he lost to Anthony Hernandez, Eric Anders, and Trevin Giles. That was in Legacy. So all against recognizable names. But the 2 big losses as of recently were Sean Strickland and Chris Curtis. Brendan Allen has this big old noggin, and he has shown to be vulnerable to be cracked. Also, if you want to remember that Aaron Jeffrey fight, even though he won that fight, he was clipped a little bit early on in that fight too. So he's not the quickest. He's a little slow, but do understand that he's been grinding over, I want to call it Sanford MMA, but it's Team Killcliff. He's been training with Henry Hooft. The striking's just going to get better and better. The striking defense will get better and better. I expect him to fight a safer fight here. I think he will really sit back and pump the jab out there. And he's going to look to try to get this fight down to the mat. I mean, that's one of his real strengths is his grappling. The problem is, though, is Chris Curtis is a fighter that's very hard to get down to the mat. I mean, you take a look at the stats in the octagon, a 92% takedown defensive rate. This guy's hard to take down. And if Brendan Allen doesn't get him down, How is it going to play out in the feet? Hopefully he doesn't get cracked again. Now, Brendan Allen's not your typical, he's a fighter that has a great ground game, but he's not your typical fighter that's going to shoot singles and doubles. This guy will do an Amanari roll. He'll roll for your legs. He'll do all types of awkward takedown attempts or attempts to get the fight down to the mat. I expect to see him doing that type of stuff. Hopefully he's not getting a little too reckless out there, because Chris Curtis can make you pay. He's a sharpshooter. So I think there is a danger for Brendan Allen to get clipped again in this fight. Chris Curtis is a phenomenal striker, but all in all, I have to bank that Brendan Allen uses that first fight as a learning experience, and he comes into this fight just a lot sharper. He's a more mature fighter, and he knows what he needs to avoid. He needs to avoid being hit with that big shot, and I think he'll be just very wary of putting himself in that situation. I think he avoids it, and he outpoints Chris Curtis. And I say outpoints. I think he gets the job done. Chris Curtis is a fighter that's very, very hard to finish. Loses almost all his fights via decision, but Brendan Allen has a nasty sub game. If he can get this fight down to the mat, I think there is a potential that Brendan Allen could pull off a sub. I mean, that's not really going out on a limb there. I mean, Brendan Allen is a dangerous grappler, so there's some potential for that. But all in all, I'm going to say that Brendan Allen wins a decision here, and I'm curious to see if he can get that finish or not, but I'm just not too confident in saying that he can, because Curtis is durable. But I have Brendan Allen here. He needs to make a statement. If he wants to make a run at this title, quicker or sooner than later. Otherwise, he gets this W, and you may see him matched up with an Amavov or a rematch with the Strickland. I don't know what they have planned for him, but you guys know we talked about it earlier on. It looks like it's going to be DDP versus Israel Adesanya. You got Robert Whitaker and Khamzat Chimaev. So if you're Allen, you really need to make a statement here. Okay, you can't just go out here and have a boring decision victory, because then you could have your plate full ahead of you before you get that title shot. So give me Brendan Allen via decision. And as we take a look at the betting line, he's a minus 220 favorite. Open as a 260. I'm not crazy about this lineup in the 200s. I think there's more value on the Curtis. But as this line hopefully continues to trend down, if you can get Brendan Allen in the minus 100s, minus 190, 180, I like Brendan Allen. I like him if you can get him with that line a little bit lower. I think that he rises to the occasion and gets the W. All right, guys, that's going to wrap up UFC Vegas 90. Appreciate you guys for hanging with me throughout this entire video. You guys know you mean a lot to me. I just want to say this first and foremost. Hope you guys are all doing great out there. Hope you're feeling good. Hope you're healthy. Hope you're enjoying life. Truly mean that. Any single one of you guys that's listening to this right now, I hope your life's going good. I hope things are good for you. And I hope you guys are making the right decisions to help that be the case, right? Don't just be down on yourself and don't just be complaining that everything's not going your way when maybe you're not understanding or realizing that has a lot to do with the decisions you're making. All right, guys. So remember, you could always step up to the plate. You could always sharpen things up. You could always fix things, right? So just because your train is a little off the tracks doesn't mean that you can't pick that up and set it back on the tracks and get that train rolling. You could always do that. No matter how bad of a situation you're in, you could get yourself out of it. All right. So think about that. Think about it like this, right? Think about if you've ever had a sports betting account. It's kind of a weird analogy, but where you're making reckless bets and you fizzle through it. And then you kind of look back and even say you started with like $1,000 account and you were at like $600-700, just hypothetical, change the numbers. And then you're saying, hey man, I was so down on myself when I was at a $600-700 because I lost a couple hundred. And I would actually love to have that $600-700 account. I could hit a couple plays and it would be fun. And I could hit a couple plays. I could build it right back up. Think about it like this. Sometimes when you're at a little bit of a rough road, a little rough spot, it's actually not that bad. If you just settle down, kind of just understand there's good times to come right around the corner. You could build that right back up past 1,000. Be patient. There's good times right around the corner, right? Don't get crazy because a couple things are going bad and just start max betting these stupid bets and blow your account. Don't max bet your life on some stupid stuff because you're just anxious and you got to have everything going your way. Take a nice deep breath, 5 seconds in, hold it, let it out. Go take a look at the beautiful sky, the green grass. Go count your blessings. Go take a look around and count your blessings because every single one of you guys has a lot of blessings. No matter, of course, some of us are going to be in better situations or supposed better situations than others. But I guarantee you, even some of you guys that are in some tough situations, I bet you got some beautiful blessings around you. You got a beautiful mother that maybe makes you some nice meatloaf on Sundays. You got You got the beach not too far away from you. You got a nice local bar to go stop in at. And you guys got blessings all around you. Count them up. Stop. Smell the roses. All right, guys. It's not that bad. All right, guys. Much love to you all. Hope you guys all have a profitable event. Signing out. Teller.
Welcome to the show. This the MMA fortune teller. Yeah.
The MMA fortune teller.
The teller.